Why do you think people get stuck in their 9 to 5s and never pursue their purpose or their ambitions? Like someone, let's say, starts up like working at an Uber driver. It's a fun their business, and they eventually just get stuck in Uber.
Life doesn't stop because you have a goal. So it's important while on a journey of pursuing your goal, you protect your goal. And part of protecting your goal is creating an infrastructure that supports your pursuit of your goal. And oftentimes that's the part that people leave out. They have an idea as to what they want to do, but they don't adopt the habits that can propel them in that direction. They have an idea as to what they want to do, and they adopt the habits, but they don't protect those habits. They have a goal and they adopt certain habits within an environment that doesn't support them. And so it's very likely that they fall back into their old habits. Even if they keep the goal, there's a lot of people who had big plans for their lives, and then they became teenage mothers. They became teenage fathers, and they felt like that was such a big responsibility that they became distracted by it. And they never quite made it back to focusing on that goal that they had. But they also didn't protect the goal by adopting certain habits and protecting those habits, putting themselves in an environment that reinforces those habits. Excuse me. Right? If I say I have a goal, I probably shouldn't be out partying 3-4 nights a week. If I say I have a goal, I probably shouldn't be drinking and using drugs to the point where my willpower is diminished. I probably shouldn't be focused on being around people who don't see my value enough to respect my goal. I probably shouldn't be in an environment where my life is not valued. A lot of people that had amazing goals and they were actually doing things. How many stories that we heard about the kid that's from the hood? He was really good in school. He was a prominent basketball player. There was a shootout between rival gangs. Nobody else died but him. He was an innocent bystander. Why are you on the block? As someone who is a prominent basketball player doing really well in school. Of course, you have friends there, your family is there, you love them, you want to hang out with them. Understand that in doing that, you put yourself in a very vulnerable position. You're not protecting your goal. You have to protect your dreams. You have to build a fence around them. You have to build a fortress around your goals. Be very careful about the people who you allow in to your kingdom. Be very careful about the other kingdoms that you visit, because the reality is we all build fortresses around our goals. We just have conscious goals and subconscious goals. And the subconscious goal may not actually be a goal that serves your life long term. It serves the person that you became who adopted a life of or perspective of survival. A person who started seeing life through the lens of lack, through the lens of scarcity. And now your actions are consistent with a person who sees the world through that lens. In everything, every system has built-in defense mechanism. So once you adopt certain habits, you really to a large extent almost feel like you don't have to defend them because the habits are natural, but you do have to defend them. If you want to go into a direction that's different from the environment that you're in. So don't only have goals, because life is not going to stop because you have a goal. The distractions are not going to eliminate themselves because you have a goal. You have to eliminate them. Pregnancy is still real. It didn't stop being a thing because you don't have goals, because now you have goals. Doesn't mean that because you have a goal, you can have sex unprotected because of that one night you was drunk and nothing's going to happen because you have a goal. Bullet still ain't got no name. Just because you have a goal, it's not going to stop that bullet from flying. So protect your goals consciously. Consciously put yourself in environments that support your goals. Adopt the habits that align you with your goals. Create an infrastructure in your life that allows you to reap the benefits of becoming the person that you say you want to be. It's not just having a goal, which is why the Uber driver who wanted to do something differently probably didn't ever do that thing that, or probably hasn't done that thing yet. Uber's not that old, right? So if you're an Uber driver, then chances are you haven't been an Uber driver for very long, and you can still do whatever it is that you want to do. So, but there are other people who say things like, oh, I just fell into this. I fell into being a social worker. I really wanted to be a professor. I fell into whatever the profession is that they don't really want to do. That's not really the dream, but it became a habit to show up there. And sometimes that's rooted in something positive in the beginning, or at least seemingly rooted in something positive in the beginning. Because if you've been looking for an employment opportunity for the past 3 years and you haven't landed anything and now you finally get an opportunity, you're happy about that. You're going to overperform, chances are, at that organization. And because you're overperforming, you get good at it. Excuse me. And whatever's rewarded is reinforced. So you want to get even better. You want to do even more. You start to really enjoy that environment. You start to really enjoy what you do, even though it's not your goal. Because people like what they're good at. And you get so caught up in being good at this thing and liking it that you lose sight of what your mission was.
So, to recap, you got to protect those habits.
Protect those habits. Protect your goal. That's how you develop habits. Once you develop those habits, protect those habits, which is oftentimes your environment. You have to change your environment. And if you cannot change your environment physically, nowadays we have technology. You can change your environment virtually. You can have a bunch of mentors that don't know you. There's so many people following Gary Vee. Gary Vee has no clue as to who they are. But to that little boy or that young kid that's watching him, he's their hero. They want to be like him. That's them creating this virtual experience for themselves because they may not have that person that's actually in their lives to help them. So don't just rely on what you have physically available to you. We have technology today. You have access to a lot of information. You have access to a lot of different people virtually. Use that opportunity. If you're in the hood, stop going outside without a destination. Don't be that dude that's just caught on the corner for no reason. Use your time wisely. Not gonna be young fella. That thing that you're doing that seems so cool today, you can get stuck doing it. And before you know it, 10 years pass. Before you look up and realize you're not a child anymore. And in that time, you may have adopted some other habits that also don't serve you because habits are contagious. And now you look up and you've created this life that has pulled you even further away from your goals. And that feeling, that realization, can encourage a person to feel defeated. And that feeling of defeated, that feeling of feeling defeated, that feeling of being defeated doesn't serve most people that I know. Over time, if you're not careful, you push yourself further and further away from your goal. Because life is not going to stop happening because you have a goal. So you have to align your life with your goal, or life will align you for someone else's. It's Uber's goal to attract new drivers and keep them. It's the driver's job who has a goal and uses, or at least intends to use, working for Uber as a means to help pursue that goal. Is that person's job to make sure that they keep their goal in mind. Because Uber is going to keep their goal in mind. Their goal in mind is to keep you there. Once you become an Uber driver, their goal is to keep you there for as long as they can. Your goal is to remember your goal and not stay there for too long. But of course, you set yourself up for that prior to Uber. Prior to working for Uber, did you have a plan? Yeah, you had a goal. What was the strategy? Okay, part of the strategy was working for Uber. What was the plan? How long were you going to work for Uber before you said, hey, it's time to go? How much of your money were you going to save? How many hours were you going to drive Uber? Every day until you made a certain amount. What amount were you trying to make every day? During what hours should you be driving? Early hours, 5 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock. 3 to 3. What are your hours? All of that should be based on a plan. And you have that before you join Uber. So if you weren't aligning your actions with your goal before Uber, but yet you're saying Uber is going to help you attain your goal, you're probably not being honest with yourself.
A lot of industries can be very cutthroat. So when you have start out and have very little leverage, how can you make sure you're not getting finessed?
You really can't make sure you're not getting finessed in the industry that's very cutthroat. You have no leverage. You're just starting out. You have no experience. You gotta feel your way through it. You gotta get mentors. You have to not be afraid of taking losses. You have to understand that you have to self-assess. You have to be self-aware enough to know the kind of person you are. And if you're cut out for this, and if you're cut out for this, then be unapologetic about your presence in that industry. And the more unapologetic you are about your presence in that industry, the more you'll fight for your position in that industry. You'll take up your space in that industry. But if that's not really you, and you know it's not really you, it's going to show. And the people are going to be able to sniff that out. It's not really you. So it'll be harder for you to acquire the success that you may be interested in, because perhaps you're chasing someone else's dream. Oftentimes you hear people saying a business or an industry is very cutthroat, when really it's just business. Chances are you thought you were somebody's friend, and maybe you were their friend, but they weren't yours. It's just important to keep things in context, in its proper context, to the best of our ability, of course. As long as we do that, and understand that we're going to take some losses in the beginning, but they're not really losses, they're lessons. The better off we'll be. The game is to be sold, not told.
What does that mean?
That means you pay for the information with your life. Someone doesn't tell you what it is because it took them their lives, a portion of their lives that they couldn't get back, in order to acquire that wisdom. So that wisdom is for sale. It's not free, and money is not free. It takes time to acquire value, to get good enough at something to be valuable in that space. Then the application of that value to make money, that takes more time to do. So when you pay that money to get that information, in essence, you're paying with your life. And that doesn't mean you're not going to go through hardship because you came out your pocket with some money. Because now that you get that information, you have to apply it. And how it worked for that person, chances are it's not going to be the way that it works for you. So you pay with your life. Why? Because you pay for the time that's spent applying this, getting the experience of applying it, and now having the wisdom. Things to be sold. That's why when you have somebody that's pouring into you, you should value it. That's why parents are important. That's why the previous generation is important. Because those are the people who have lived and they, ideally speaking, care about you enough to just instill that in you as you're getting older. So that when you jump off the porch, you have a solid foundation. That's the whole point. Of course, children don't know that. Chances are they've always had these people around them. So when you're a child, in the beginning, you may appreciate it. You're very, very young. But when you become an adolescent, you may feel entitled to it. You take it for granted until you go out and you experience the world a bit, because the world ages you, forces you to grow up eventually. if you live long enough, and if you're paying close enough attention. And then you start to see the things that the people were trying to instill in you. You start to see the value of it. Sometimes by the time you see it, you're still young enough to go back and say thank you and learn more. Because now you have context, so you can ask better questions. But sometimes those people are not there by the time you learn it, by the time you figure it out. So it's a blessing. You have people that are interested in you being more than a symbol in society, really interested in the substance that you have as an individual so that you can be a light for society. Understand business is business. Try to keep it in its proper context.